And thank you so much, Ray. And I wanted to thank everyone for coming. And this is a faculty who is on sabbatical at CHAR this year. And his name is Dr. Yongju Kim. And he is a colonel in the Korean Military Academy, and his degree is in psychology. He did his bachelor and master's at Seoul University, which is the top university in Korea, and then his dissertation in psychology at Giessen University in Germany. He plays a number of leadership roles at the Korean Military Academy, with which we have sort of an ongoing relationship. As you'll see in the talk, we have current officers also doing the graduate work and former as well. And we have some very good collaborations going. So I want to thank everyone for coming and turn it to Professor Kim.
Thank you. So at home, I will greet Seoul as an active colonel, but here is university, so I act as a civilian. At first, I thank Associate Dean very happy for granting me this presentation opportunity, and to Professor Caroline also, I thank you. And I thank everyone here for being with me, my presentation. The subject of my presentation is the present and future of stress research in South Korean Army. It's not North Korean, so South Korean Army. And I have experience not only in Korean Military Academy, but also in Bundeswehr of Germany. So this experience helped me very much for investigating the psychological problems in military. And I have studied again in the university. This helped also me very much to understand the psychological situation in military. So here, as you see, my research performance. First is the development of the selection system of intelligence officer. Do you know intelligence officer? Yes, spy is same as spy. And second is the stress diagnosis system for soldiers. And another is the leadership. And here, sense of national security is a very important issue in Korea, because we are in front of North Korea. This national security sense is very important. And another is Esprit corps, mental combat power, and abstract tactics. As civilian, you don't know the abstract tactics. It's a mission command in U.S. military. They imported from Germany, but the original is in Germany. So this year I have studied again social engineering. This term we don't use as a psychologist. We don't use this term, but computer technician, they use this term, social engineering. So I have studied at first in this year. So as you see, I have researched a very variety of topics because the Army want to make such research in the academy, so I have to do so almost. It's the same as department. 백화점이 뭐지? Department store. Yes. It's a department store. Yes. In our academy, there are so small number of professors, 7 professors. They must study every topic. So my presentation consists of in 5 parts. The first is I will explain on the stress and PTSD in barracks and battlefields. And continue, I will explain about the studies on the military stress in Korea. And then next, intervention to problematic behaviors in Korean Army. The first part is perhaps the main topics in my presentation is lifespan approach to PTSD among veterans in OSU. in Caroline's lab, especially. And lastly, I will explain on future research plans. Is my personal plan. So, the terminology stress is nowadays inseparable and tied in everyday life. You say often, "Oh, I get stress." In civil area, there are much things present stress, but in military, it is not easy to as enlisted soldiers in Korean Army, it is also not easy, very difficult. They get stress from several factors. The first factor, the main factor is the young men in Korea, they do military service obligatory. Fortunately, women is exempt, only men. And in barracks, their entering and exit is controlled. Although they have 23 days vacation and weekend they can visit, the family of soldiers can visit, but another time in work days they are controlled and they have to stay in barracks just for young men. And the residential environment is changed drastically after entering military. In nowadays, the young men at home have sleep in individual rooms alone, but in barracks, 6 or 8 soldiers have to sleep together in a room. It's also stress for young men. And the enlisted soldiers, the active duty soldiers, have also individual problems as a young man, problem with girlfriend, problem with money, problem with future jobs, and so on. Every such stressor gives a very strong influence to mental health of soldiers. If it is very high, then they can evoke such problematic behaviors, suicide or assault or desertion with weapons and so on. So we pay very much attention to the stress of soldiers because we want to prevent such problematic behaviors. As you see in tables, this table indicates that the situation in barrack is not easy. They give stress, it's very stressful. The first line is general psychiatric test. The number are decreasing here, but it irritates you. The soldiers in Korean Army, they have to test every 6 months in barracks and in entering stage also, so they don't need to have psychological tests in hospitals. So the number is decreasing. But every index of disorders are seized. So this increasing tendency means the life in barrack is very stressful in nowadays. It's all same as in America. Another issue is trauma. This trauma means events that involve serious threat to life or physical integrity, either for oneself or significant others. 8 and 10% traumatized men and 20 to 31% traumatized women develop PTSD in US. And these PTSD prevalence rates in civilian population of US is so in men 5 to 6%, women 10 to 12%. Perhaps women is weak than men. So how about in battlefield? Is terrible. In battlefield, there are so many stressors. At first, uncertainty is the main stress in battlefield. You cannot calculate the time. You don't know how the future is. This unpredictable situation makes us very stressful in battlefield. And for fear for death and fear for injury also is great stress factors. And this unfamiliar natural circumstances, so bad weather and cold and so high, and the geographical circumstances is very difficult. Such circumstances give us also stress. And in battlefield, you have no time to refresh, no time to sleep. So your physical state is very bad, so fatigue and suffering. Other in the battlefield, military want to control the information, so there are not so much information for the combat situation. In this situation, the wild rumor will spreading out very easily. So I have displayed here as example so small factors. There are a number of factors to give us stress in battlefield. Under such factors, if you are exposed to combat situation, then it will develop in later life PTSD. Of course, in combat, during the combat, PTSD symptoms, but in the later life, also you get PTSD. So we can see many examples the PTSD symptoms during World War. First, it is known after World War, it is known shell shock. As you see in pictures, it's terrible. So in the hospital, he walked so, not only singing, we can feel very terrible. 8,000 soldiers after war in England show this shell shock. In Germany, 200,000 to 300,000 soldiers in later life show shell shock. In France, almost similar levels number of soldiers show shell shock. It's 10. How about in World War II? In World War II, approximately 34% of veterans had combat exposure. It means 6% have no combat exposure. From among those veterans, they shows 50% among prisoners of World War II PTSD symptoms. This percent is among prisoners. Among normal soldiers who are not in concentration camp, or they show some little less percent. So maximum 31%, I think. And in Japanese concentration camp, the rate is very high, 84% among prisoners. In Gulf War, the PTSD rate is approximately 10%. It means in Gulf War, there is less combat exposure than World War II. Especially in Vietnam War veterans, we can see the data here in PowerPoint. US veterans, they participated from 1964 to 1973, almost 3.4 million soldiers. Among them, 58,000 persons were dead, and almost 10% soldiers wounded. And the PTSD rate is, as you see, 18% to 30%. For Korean veterans, they the Korean army dispatched in same period almost 300,000 soldiers to Vietnam, and 5,000 deaths and 11,000 wounded. The rate is the same as American soldiers. But the official rate of PTSD among Vietnam veterans of Korea is not known. We have no research about this PTSD rate. But fortunately, Kang and Kim Yi have surveyed on PTSD research on Vietnam veterans. In this article is 48 PTSD symptoms you can see. It is some higher than American veterans. Yeah, it's not official data. It's only among veterans who answered our questionnaires. It's not whole veterans. So, and in Korea, many research, professors have researched on the stress in civil area. There are very, very much articles in Korea. But about military stress, you can see only 57 articles from 1991 to 2017, only 57 articles about military stress. The most of them are correlation studies and with a small number of subjects. And the research topic is also a little biased to simple design. It's a relation between stress and stress response. And about the PTSD of veterans is only 13 articles. So little. The main interest in Korean army is not in civil area. In Korean army, they have a main interest in stress research. Firstly, prevention of severe accident and problem actions. Because event have a negative impact on evaluation not only for commanders, but also for the military from public. So they don't want such event occurred. When I say severe accident, it means suicide, assault, armed desertions. Second interest is intervention of stress of soldiers. They want to diagnose the level of stress of soldiers, and so survey the main stressors immediately. What is the main stressor is. And then they want to provide an effective treatment for soldiers who suffer from stress, under stress. So the research interest is something different in Korean army as in civil area. This is an example of research that I have done in 10 years ago. It's a development of stress diagnosis tools. In this study, also I have surveyed what is the main stress in military, in barracks. So after statistical analysis, I have categorized in 3 parts of stressors. Firstly is this is first part, second, third, and then as fourth part, I searched also the psychological vulnerability factors. If a soldier have a low self-efficacy or impulsive, if he feels alone, and he's not unstable, then it is easy to get the stress. And this factor influence the process. We say it's moderate variables or intervene variables. Here, as you see, service aversion, sense of inferiority, such things, or the relation with officer, produce, colleague, successor. it's very comic or interesting. The soldier get a stress if the successor ignore the soldiers. This ignorance is also very great stress for soldiers. So I have divided in 4 groups as a result of stress in relation. So if a soldier takes a stress, they show such stress response, cognitive, emotional, physical, and external behavior. We think it is very important because such stress response develop to problematic behavior, so suicide or assault, desertion. So I have developed these stress diagnosis tools. So I have developed a questionnaire. With this questionnaire, you can identify every stressors and stress response. So it is easy to give a treatment as a counselor. We give to counselor every information through this inventory. Then the counselor can counsel the soldiers very easily with such information. So now I will explain you about our intervention to promote behaviors in Korean Army. Firstly, we located counselor in every regiment. In 2005, we started with 40 counselors, professional civil, in civil area. So now the number of counselors is 308 persons. They are located in division space, 1 man in regiment, 1 man in headquarters of division. Second intervention that I want to explain is QPR training. This QPR system is originated from U.S. Air Force. Here, question means you question to soldiers suffer suicide tendency, and then you can ask psychologically something, and then persuade is you can help him in positive orientation, so positive thinking, so the positive behavior, or as commander or also as a colleague or as a peer, it is limited to help him, absolutely. So in end state, you have to refer him to professional counselors. This system, we train young officers or young commissioned officers, yearly 600 or 700 officers. We trained them to take a role in these systems. Third intervention is green camp. This green camp is similar to group counseling programs. We have opened this camp in corps space, so battalion, division, and then corps is corps, so 100,000 soldiers almost. And here we gathering the maladjusted soldiers in this camp, and then we give our treatment, group counseling. So it takes 1 week, and yearly 2,500 to 3,000 maladjusted soldiers will be treated in this camp. And another intervention is development of screening test from 2009 till 2009. We have used for screening MMPI 1 and 2 versions, but we have developed ourselves for screening, so we can screen the maladjusted person or soldiers, or predicted soldiers as maladjusted. We can screen, and then we can give help, or we send him to homes. this is an innovation of military cultures. I think so in 5 years or in 4 years, there occur very great accident every time. So a number, so 3 or 10 soldiers killed by maladjusted soldiers. And then after such great accident, the army emphasized immer the creation of new military cultures. Every time it's new military cultures. So it is repeated again. So probably don't believe army. So if an army said, oh, we create a new military culture, oh, it's again. In 3 years, it will be garbage. So this innovation of military culture is repeating every time. But I think it is also very good. With this innovation effort, we can create new systems easier. So I am pro to the innovation of military culture. Another is development of psychological test. So internet addiction diagnosis test is that I have done with this research, and stress diagnosis test, various surveys to diagnosis to the problem in barracks. Last is leadership education or programs for successful commandership. In not only in civil but also in military, the leaders play a very great role of innovating the systems. So when the leader is against the idea, then this idea cannot go. So we train and educate the leader as he will show leadership in the military of the democratic state is an example. So by such intervention to problematic behaviors, fortunately we have a good data index. As you see here, from 2011, the suicide rate of the 20s, from 21 to 29 age, is decreased to 8% per 100,000 million. In civil area is 20s. In whole population, the rate go something high. It's in whole population, it's in Korea, is the first state in the world, is 30%. In US, it's 20s. But in military, in Korea, it's 8, but US Army shows 15 soldiers per 100,000 soldiers. So now is our main topic in my presentation is lifespan approach to PTSD among veterans in OSU. We cannot sum such a simple research design if we want to study about PTSD. If a soldier exposed to combat and then he got PTSD symptoms in later life, so we surveyed these variables. These very simplest versions. And you can add here another factors. So in post-war factors, family support, or your personality factors, and then you can design a simple research design. But here in OSU, use the lifespan approach. It means you can use survey pre-war factors, the version factors, post-war factors. And then you see how these pre-war factors influence the combat exposure, not only combat exposure to PTSD. So you can see the complicated interaction between the factors. So I have experience over here. I have learned from Professor Caroline. Here are some two positive and negative pathways in this research design. Positive pathway means if you have friendly experience. So childhood family environment is if you are very comfortable and good supported family, and then this factor influence to another factors in war zone, in post-war, and PTSD. This is positive pathways. Negative pathway is if you experienced in childhood so badly, then you got very much stressors in the family or in the public, and then this experience influenced negatively to PTSD. This factor increased PTSD symptoms. But this is an assumption about two pathways, positive pathway and negative pathway. And if we can see this pathway so independently in our research, it's a very good result. So we have tried to see the result in our research here. Skang, Edwin, John, Spiro 3 have researched and published 2016 this lifespan perspective on combat exposure and PTSD symptom in later life. Subject is 900 male veterans, World War II and Korean Wars. So as we see here, a little bit complicated here, positive pathways and the negative pathways. It looks something salient, these pathways, but it's not perfect independent. There are some correlations here. So, of course, family environment influenced not direct, so indirect influence. These are indirect influence. Here you can see, so a little bit direct influence, so it's something complicated, but it gives us a very good implication. Here you can see, so the two pathways. So if we study further, perhaps we can gain a good result, so clear result. And then another example is Gang et al. Is in progress. It's a path analysis of combat exposure PTSD symptoms in later life among Korean Vietnam War veterans. It's another samples. 450 male Korean veterans participate in this survey. And there is something similar to first articles. So you can see here also more strong pathways, so more salient, the positive pathway and negative pathways. But unfortunately, is interaction also you can find here. So. Combat exposure developed not only PTSD, but also PTG or SRG. PTG means post-traumatic growth. SRG means stress-related growth. I think the term SRG is more general than PRG, so I explain as SRG. This article handles the PSRG. So if you are exposed to combat, but here added age, variable education, optimism, then this combat exposure influenced in later life, so positively. So psychological well-being, it is a positive relation. So it means combat exposure developed not only PTSD, but also SRG also. Of course, optimism is a very great, important factor for psychological well-being. It is verified also here, very strong. The thickness of arrow means the magnitude of relations, so influence loading factors. So, but interesting result is this combat exposure has indirectly by perceived aspect to psychological well-being is interesting pathways. So with three articles, we have seen the impact or effect of combat exposure to PTSD or SRG. So through such researches, we can get implications. First is cumulative advantage or disadvantage model. It is the same term as positive or negative pathway concept. Here, we can consider every variables as pre-war, version, and post-war factors. And we can further consider about the independence of variables, or independence of two pathways, or the dependence of two pathways. It will be further considered, further researched. Second implication is we have to pay attention to not only PTSD but also SRG. This SRG concept is some associated with the positive well-being, or so Martin Seligman has said, so positive thinking, positive well-being, flourishing, well-being, so aging well. Such topics is related with this. And during I preparing this seminar, I have similar logic with this two pathway concept. As you know, Herzberg have said two factors here in motivation theory. Herzberg says we have two sorts of motivations. One is hygiene factors, second is motivators. This is physical, almost. This is so mental, psychological. And these two factors are not one dimension, it's another dimension. So if you have a difficulty in hygiene factors, and then you can give solve the problems, and then the satisfaction will be not automatically higher. It's another things. To increase the satisfaction, you must give effort in motivator factor also. It's separated factors. This logic is almost the same as two pathways. So if you want to help some soldiers suffer PTSD in later life, you have verified two pathways, and then you have to give two sorts of treatment. One is in negative pathways, you solve the problems in negative pathways, and in pathway also. You must give effort simultaneously. So, lastly, my future research plans. I have seen here much lifespan approaches. So if I go back to Korea, I will try to also search variables in my research, so pre-war or post-war factors. And not only PTSD, but also well-being also is a very interesting topics in future in my labs. So, and we have interest not only in soldiers, but the family of soldiers. If the family is unstable or in crisis, then the soldier cannot concentrate in his jobs. So we must give both effort to soldiers and to family also. Second topic is research with lives and development perspectives. In Korea, they want to see the result very fast, so they don't like longitudinal studies. Every cross-sectional study is very popular. It is same as in military also. The commander wants to see the result in his times, not after his times. So, but this longitudinal design is very important. We need also in 5 years intervals research. We can do very good following research in PTSD. So here also we can think about the two model systems for the treatment PTSD. Next, the last, my personal hope and wish, is the foundation of the Institute of Korean Military Psychology. The foreign state, so US, America, and Germany, they have in military such a professional institute, psychological institute in army. But in Korea, it's no. So I want to have such institute in Korea. So if I go back, I will start to prepare the foundation of institute, and together for the foundation of institute is needed the foundation of Korean Military Psychology Association also, so we can contact with other professors in civil university who are interested in military affairs, and then we can make an association. It's my great hope or wish in my life. So, thank you. It's my presentation.
Thank you so much for that very interesting presentation. We have time for some questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Excellent presentation. I'm interested more about your combat exposure variable.
Yeah.
How, in fact, was it operationalized? Was it binary yes or no combat exposure, or were you able to assess the severity of the exposure itself?
Combat exposure.
We use continuous variables.
Okay.
So there's a Terry Keane measure, has a regular measure that's been widely used. The Keane's developed, so it's continuous.
Thank you.
I said I would answer first.
Combat exposure, she is a specialist. Do you have any question? Oh yeah.
Just wondering, in the South Korean army, are there women in the army at all?
10% women are active in military. They are non-commissioned officer or the officers. Yes. In my academy, Korean Military Academy, it is the same as West Point because we have imported after Korean War this system. So we have also 10% women cadet.
Okay.
Yes, they are very brave. Yeah.
Do women see combat?
Combat?
Women see combat.
Yes, they are very aggressive, and they can combat. 나가야지 당연히. Of course, they must.
Yeah, your slide show us there is the decrease suicide rate.
Yes.
So do you think what makes the kind of decreasing suicide rate in Korean army?
I was going to say, how much of it is the screening and how much of it is the interventions? I thought the sort of multi-level intervention was really interesting for the suicide prevention.
There are several reasons in decreasing tendency suicide rate is. I think the main reason is the screening test in the basic training course entering military. If a young man enters military, they have a training in basic training schools. There we screen the soldiers. If we predict these soldiers will be maladjusted in the barracks, then we send him to home. So we have less problem with maladjusted soldiers in front divisions. So in previously, it's not so actively worked. But for 5 years ago, also commander have tried to locate such screening systems, and now we send the soldiers who is predicted as maladjusted, then go home. So this also decrease the suicide rate. And other effort as extensions effort, they have also influenced to the rate of suicide. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But so you've seen an increase with all the new counselors. So you've seen an increase
Yes.
in people being referred to counselors.
Yes, we have army 500,000 soldiers. So at first we have started 40 counselors, but now it's 308. It's also less than the number we wanted. It must be 600 counselor. And then every regiment have one counselor. Now one division has 4 regiment, so there are only 2 counselor. Then we need more. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for.
Hi, thank you. So,